Alright, so in this video we're going to be looking at some ways of representing data graphically and just using that information to answer a few key questions. And the reason we do this ultimately is because lots of data is more easily communicated using a variety of graphs. Okay, so the first ones we're going to look at today are going to be bar graphs or column graphs. Now, these are basically a very easy way for us to tell differences visually and to see them very clearly and distinctly what some patterns could be. Now, we'll go through the questions, and the questions will give us some useful information. So the first one is, which student achieved the highest test score? So as you can see on the vertical axis here, we have all of these test scores going up to 100. And on the horizontal axis, we have everyone's name: Liam, Ava, Noah, Mia, and Ethan. So what we have here are all the scores of these kids and how they did. So which student had the highest score? Well, the one that has the largest or tallest bar, which in this case is Ava. So Ava had the score of 92. Alright, let's look at B. So what is the difference between Mia and Ava's scores? Let's find Mia here. So Mia got 67. Now, these numbers aren't always here. For the sake of this question, I've included the numbers so that you can see them, but you may have to check in the future on a column graph where the top of the column lines up with the vertical axis. Alright, so we've got Ava's score at 92. We're going to find the difference between Mia's score, which is 67. So, in order to do that, we just take that 67 away from 92, and that results in 25. Alright, look, see, what is the total of all 5 students' scores? So, if we add up 78 plus 92 plus 85 plus 67 and plus 88, we should end up with 410. Alright, so why do we do this? Basically, all of these questions are realistic questions that you might ask as a teacher to try and figure out what's happening in your class. Whoever got the highest score tells you, well, I probably don't need to worry too much about that person. And whoever got the lowest score might indicate that they need some kind of academic help. But for everyone else, we kind of see that we are getting some pretty reasonable scores and no one is ultimately failing. Now, it's important to note that the more questions we ask and the bigger our data set is, the more conclusions we can reach and the more accurate information will become. Alright, let's look at the next one. Okay, let's look at question 2. So question 2, we have a graph showing the number of items sold across a variety of categories. Alright, each one of these is a form of categorical data. That is, they're in groups or categories and they can't be assigned a value. So let's look at question 2 and A. How many hats were sold? So we find hats and we go up. And we might want to measure it against the axis, but we can see it's 70. So 70 hats. If we look at B, we can see what is the difference in sales between shirts and jackets. Well, shirts is here, so that's 155. Then we take away our jackets. Our jackets is here, and that's 95. So if we do 155 and we minus 95, we're going to end up with 60. Alright, let's look at C. So which product had the highest number of sales? Well, the highest number went to the tallest one, which means it's shirts. Which product sold the least? The least selling one was the lowest one, which was hats. And then E, how many more shoes were sold than bags. Well, shoes, they sold 130. And bags, we sold 85. So 130 minus 85 is just 45. Again, these questions help us look into the data and see whether we can find any useful information. Because hats are selling so badly, we might stop selling hats. Okay? What's causing us to sell so many shirts in comparison to everything else? Maybe we're better off not selling so many of these categories or applying some lessons we've learned here to the rest of these. Alright, that's it for this video. Hopefully it's helpful, and I will see you in the next one.